It is 2 in the morning, 400 feet below the crest of the dam, and the concrete under his boots is humming. Not loud, not violent. A low, steady vibration that never fully stops. The kind you feel in your teeth before you hear it in your ears. He presses his palm flat against the wall of the gallery and holds it there for 3 seconds, the way he has every night for 11 years. It is a habit nobody trained him to have. It is a habit the wall taught him. On the other side of that wall, 39 billion tons of water are pressing inward, day and night, without pause, without weekends, without mercy. He is not thinking about the number in an abstract way. He has felt what a fraction of that number can do to a steel door left slightly warped. Tonight, the hum is normal. He knows what normal feels like, and that knowledge is the only alarm system that has never once failed him. The flashlight on his hip is older than his youngest daughter. He has replaced the battery so many times, he no longer remembers the brand printed on the casing. It is not the only light source in the gallery, but it is the one he trusts, because the fixed lighting along the ceiling runs on a circuit that has failed twice in his career. Both times during storms, both times for reasons that had nothing to do with the dam itself and everything to do with a substation 40 miles away. Down here, redundancy is not a policy printed in a binder. It is a flashlight that still works when the ceiling goes dark. Here's the question nobody asks when they see a dam from the road. Who is inside it right now? Not on top of it, not beside it in a visitor center, but inside the mass of concrete itself. In corridors poured 70 years ago, walking toward a sound at an hour when the rest of the valley is asleep. The answer is a small rotating crew of engineers and technicians who never fully leave the structure, because a wall holding back a reservoir this size is never, technically, finished being built. It is finished being poured. It is never finished being watched. To understand why anyone would choose to sleep inside a dam, you first have to understand what the dam is actually doing to the ground beneath it, every second, whether anyone is watching or not. The reservoir behind this wall covers an area large enough that pilots use it as a landmark from the air. The weight of that water does not simply push against the concrete. It pushes down into the rock beneath the dam's foundation, and it pushes sideways through pores in that rock that are smaller than a human hair. Somewhere in this structure, that pressure is being measured right now, in real time, by instruments older than some of the men reading them. Most people who drive across the top of a dam like this one see a road, a railing, maybe a plaque with a completion date. They do not see the 70, 80, sometimes over 100 feet of solid concrete beneath their tires, poured in stages over years, each stage bonded to the last with a seam that engineers still track individually, decades later, because a seam is where a structure this size is most honest about its own age. They do not see the rock beneath the foundation either, drilled and grouted and monitored, because a dam this size is never really held up by concrete alone. It is held up by a partnership between concrete and bedrock that took years to establish and now has to be maintained. Quietly, for the rest of the structure's working life, he steps through a low steel door into what the crew calls the spine, a horizontal gallery that runs the width of the dam like a rib cage turned sideways. The ceiling is just under 6 feet. Water beads on the concrete in certain sections, not because the dam is failing, but because concrete this thick sweats the way stone does in a cave. He knows which beads of moisture are normal and which ones are new. New is the word that matters here. New is the only word that gets a phone call made at 3 in the morning. He was trained by a man who spent 30 years walking this exact gallery before retiring to a house he built within sight of the reservoir. Close enough that he still drives up once a year to look at the water level and shake his head at whatever the crest elevation happens to be that season. That older man taught him to read moisture the way a tracker reads footprints. Not by asking whether water is present, because in a structure this size water is always present somewhere, but by asking whether the pattern of that water has changed since the last time someone looked closely. A stain that has looked the same for 6 years is wallpaper. A stain that has grown by an inch since last month is a phone call. The living quarters, if you can call them that, sit in a widened section of gallery near the base, 3 levels down from the crest. There is a steel frame bunk bolted directly into a concrete alcove, a single locker, a thin wool blanket, and a lamp with a shade the color of weak tea. It is not comfortable in the way a hotel room is comfortable. It is comfortable in the way a bunker is comfortable, which is a different kind of comfort entirely. Built entirely out of the certainty that nothing outside these walls can reach you without going through several feet of reinforced concrete first. He has slept in that alcove more nights than he has slept in his own bed this year. His wife stopped asking why around year 4. The honest answer, the one he has never fully said out loud to her, is that the hum stops being frightening and starts being something closer to a heartbeat. You do not sleep well next to silence in a place like this. Silence inside a dam is the sound of an instrument that has stopped reporting. The bunk itself is bolted, not just placed, because a structure that moves thermally by fractions of an inch over the course of a day is not a structure where you leave furniture loose against a wall. He learned that lesson secondhand, from a story passed down among the crew about a shelf that once worked its way free over a period of months, following the same slow rhythm as the concrete around it, until it finally let go entirely on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon with nobody standing near it. Nothing about that story is dramatic. That is exactly why it is the one new hires are told first. The dam does not announce its movements. It simply moves, patiently, and expects you to notice. The lamp beside the bunk has a switch worn smooth from thumbs, and its cord runs to an outlet spliced into the same circuit as the emergency lighting, on purpose, so that even if the main power fails somewhere upstream, the small, warm light beside his pillow stays on. It is a detail nobody outside the crew would ever think to ask about. Inside these walls, it is the difference between waking from an alarm into darkness and waking into a room he already knows by heart. The system that keeps this dam from becoming a headline is not glamorous. It is a network of drainage galleries, pressure relief wells, and seepage collection channels, all designed around one unglamorous fact. Water under enough pressure will always find the smallest available path through solid rock. The engineers do not try to stop that seepage completely. They cannot. Instead, they give the water a path they control, channels cut deliberately into the foundation rock, and they measure exactly how much water flows through those channels every single day. A steady number is safe. A rising number, even a small one, is not a crisis, but it is a question that gets answered immediately, not tomorrow. If those drainage systems clog, or if the pressure relief wells stop doing their job, the water does not simply stay where it is. It finds new paths, uncontrolled ones, through rock that was never designed to carry it. That is the scenario nobody on this crew says out loud in casual conversation, because saying it out loud is bad luck in the specific, superstitious way that only people who work inside concrete walls for a living tend to believe in bad luck. So instead, they check the drains, every shift, every gallery, by hand with a flashlight, because some things a sensor still cannot do as well as a person crouching down and actually looking. Some of the drainage channels are wide enough to walk through standing up. Others narrow to a crawl space barely wider than a man's shoulders. And those are the ones nobody enjoys inspecting, but everybody inspects anyway, because a clogged channel in a wide gallery is visible from 10 feet away, while a clogged channel in a narrow one can hide for weeks. He keeps a set of knee pads in his locker specifically for those crawl spaces. Worn through at the seams from years of use, replaced twice already. Nobody issues those. You bring your own, because the job teaches you what the manual leaves out. His shift starts at 11 at night and ends at 7 in the morning, a schedule chosen deliberately because the dam moves more, thermally, at night, when the outer face cools faster than the water-facing side. Concrete this thick does not behave like concrete in a driveway. It expands and contracts on its own slow schedule, sometimes taking days to fully respond to a change in air temperature. And the engineers have learned to read those tiny movements the way sailors read weather. Winter shifts are longer in a different sense. The reservoir behind the dam does not freeze solid the way a shallow pond might, but the surface layer stiffens enough to change the sound the water makes against the upstream face. A low groaning that travels through the concrete and reaches the galleries as a faint, almost musical note that new crew members mistake every single year for something wrong. It is not something wrong. It is ice working against a wall built to expect ice. One more sound on a long list of sounds this dam has been making since before he was born. The rounds are almost meditative once you have done them long enough. Gallery 1, check the piezometers, the instruments that read water pressure inside the rock itself. Gallery 2, check the seepage collection troughs. Run a hand along the concrete for temperature and moisture. Gallery 3, the crack monitors. Hairline gauges glued to the wall years ago, each one a tiny window into whether the dam has moved a fraction of a millimeter since the last inspection. Most nights, nothing has moved. Most nights are the entire point. Between rounds, there is coffee made on a single hot plate and conversation that almost never touches the water outside. Crews talk about children, about trucks, about a football game 3 states away that none of them will watch live because cell signal this far underground is close to non-existent. It is easier to sleep beside 39 billion tons of water if you spend most of your waking hours not thinking about it directly. The same way a bridge worker learns not to look straight down. Food comes from a small kitchen near the control room, 3 levels up, stocked with the kind of meals that reheat well and do not require much attention. Stews, canned vegetables, strong instant coffee, the diet of men who eat in 15-minute windows between rounds. Nobody complains about the food. Nobody chose this job for the food. There is a small window in the control room, 3 levels up from the deepest gallery, that faces the downstream side of the valley. It is the only window most of the crew sees for 8 hours straight. And during a night shift, it usually shows nothing but darkness, and far below, a scattering of porch lights from the town that sits in the dam's shadow. He finds himself glancing at that window more than he would admit out loud. Not because he expects to see anything unusual, but because it is the one place in the structure where the outside world still exists as something other than a number on a gauge. What can go wrong inside a structure like this is rarely dramatic in the way movies suggest. It is rarely a sudden catastrophic break. It is almost always small and slow, a crack that widens by a fraction of a millimeter more than expected, a drain that runs slightly cloudier than it did last week, a piezometer reading that climbs 2 points and does not come back down. Each of those small signs, on its own, means very little. Engineers here are trained to distrust a single reading and trust a pattern. A pattern tracked over weeks is what tells them something the concrete itself cannot say in words. There have been moments, rare ones, when a reading climbed and did not stop climbing. He remembers one years ago, a seepage rate in Gallery 4 that crept upward over 3 consecutive shifts. Nobody panicked, because panic is not a tool that fixes concrete. They increased inspection frequency, drilled a new relief point exactly where the data told them to drill it, and watched the number fall back to normal over the following 2 weeks. It was not a disaster averted at the last second. It was a slow problem caught early because someone was walking that gallery at 2 in the morning instead of trusting a sensor to do it alone. He still remembers the specific sound the drill made when it finally broke through to the pressure pocket the data had predicted. A short hiss followed by a controlled flow of water into the very channel built to carry it away. Nobody cheered. Nobody called it a save. The senior engineer on shift that night simply wrote the new reading in the logbook, initialed it, and moved on to the next gallery. Because in this line of work, the reward for solving a problem quietly is that almost nobody outside the crew ever learns it existed at all. So why does he stay? It is not simply the pay, though the pay is part of it. Better than most work available within 100 miles of this valley. It is not simply pride, though there is real pride in being one of a small number of people trusted to read a structure that protects tens of thousands of people living downstream, most of whom have never once thought about who checks the drains at night. Ask him directly and he will tell you it is the silence, the specific silence of a gallery at 3 in the morning when the hum is steady and every reading matches what it matched the night before. That silence means the wall is doing exactly what it was built to do. And being the person who confirms that every single night has become something he is not willing to hand off to someone else. There is a kind of isolation in this work that people outside it mistake for loneliness. And it is not the same thing. Loneliness is wanting company you do not have. What he feels most nights is closer to ownership. The specific and quiet pride of being one of a handful of people alive who could walk this dam blind and know exactly where they were standing by the sound of the hum alone. He has turned down 2 supervisory jobs that would have moved him permanently to the surface, into an office with better hours and a view instead of a flashlight. Both times he said no within a day of being asked. Both times, when people asked why, the honest answer took him longer to find than the decision itself had taken to make. There is also the town below the dam, visible from the crest on a clear morning, rooftops and a school and a grain elevator. All of it sitting inside the shadow of the reservoir without most of its residents ever thinking twice about the wall holding that water back. He has stood on the crest at sunrise more times than he can count, looking down at that town, and he has never once found the view boring. It is the one place in his life where the value of the work is visible in a single glance. Houses still standing, because a wall built decades ago is still doing its job, and because men like him keep walking the same corridors, checking the same drains, night after night, long after the excitement of the job title wore off. By 7 in the morning, the next shift arrives, and there is a short handoff, 5 minutes at most. Numbers exchanged, nothing unusual to report. He climbs the internal stairwell toward the surface, past level after level of gallery, until the air changes and daylight appears at the top of the shaft. Outside, the reservoir looks calm, almost ordinary, a flat sheet of water stretching toward the hills. It does not look like 39 billion tons of anything. It looks like a lake. That gap between how the water looks from above and how it feels from inside the wall at 2 in the morning is the entire reason this job exists. The dam does not need someone to admire it from the outside. It needs someone willing to walk its spine in the dark, hand on the concrete, listening for the one sound that would mean the hum has changed. Somewhere downstream, in the town he can see from the control room window, people are waking up, making coffee, sending children to school. None of them thinking for even a second about 39 billion tons of water sitting patiently above their rooftops. That is not ignorance. That is the entire point of the job being done well. A dam that nobody thinks about is a dam that is working exactly as intended. And somewhere inside its walls, right now, someone is making sure it stays that way. Tonight, like most nights, the wall said nothing new. Tomorrow, he will go back down and listen again.